Welcome to Girl Talk. My name is Caroline and I will be your host today. We have an interesting topic that we will be discussing. We're going to be speaking about nutrition and fitness. I have two guests with me here today. They are my daughters, my adult daughters, and I will give them a chance to introduce themselves to you.
Hi, I'm Danielle.
Hi, I'm Caitlin.
So Danielle and Caitlin did not exactly grow up in a home where I focused a lot on proper health and teaching them how to eat healthy and to exercise. I think when they were growing up, I fed them a lot of McDonald's. Some of our breakfasts include cake. Sometimes we had dinner for breakfast. So I didn't put a lot of emphasis on teaching my children how to eat healthy, but I'm very happy that today they both have developed a better attitude towards food, a very healthy attitude, where food is not just something that they enjoy, but they also know that food, it nourishes their body and it's basically medicine for their body. So we're going to talk about that today because in our culture, I think we have a misunderstanding and a misconception of what proper health looks like. So Danielle, why do you think, according to the Bible, why would health be so important? Like, why would that even be a Christian topic?
Well, I think it just goes back to being like saying that the body is like the temple of the Holy Spirit. And so, I mean, we have one body that's given to us, and if it is the temple of the Holy Spirit, then we should care for it in that regard and in that manner. And so, I mean, I think there's like so much to be said about why it would be important to take care of your body. But I think for me, the one thing that I always remember is that I only have one body. This is the only one I get. And like a very important way to glorify God is through our body. And so that means taking care of it and respecting it in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Caitlin, what do you think?
Well, I agree with what Danielle said. I think that this body was gifted to us. It was given to us for a purpose that God has for us in a way that He wants to use us for His plan. And so if we are not taking care of what He gave us and we're not nourishing it the way we should, we're not using it to the best of our capability, then we're not honoring His gift that He gave us, and we're not preparing ourselves to be used in the way He wants to use us.
Right.
That's absolutely true. It is biblical. Paul the Apostle talks about that in Corinthians, and then he also speaks about it again in the book of Romans, that we are to present our bodies to God as a living sacrifice. And in order to do that, in order to do God's work, we have to take good care of our body. Because not only does it help our body, but it also helps our minds. Let's speak a little bit about the sin of gluttony, because that is a sin, and the Bible refers to it as a sin. When you hear the word gluttony, what do you think?
I think overindulging.
What does that mean? Elaborate a little bit about that. Because I think that that's something, to be honest, we're all guilty of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can necessarily just be a glutton when it comes to food. I think it can be like everything, but I think it's just kind of taking in more than what you know you can handle. And I think obsessing over like one thing. And for a lot of people, I think the easy thing to go to is food. And so you can be overindulgent with food and really, like I said, taking in more than you can handle. And I mean, it's not healthy for you. Like if you know that something is not good for you, then A, why eat it? But then why like eat it in excess?
Right.
And then just really go overboard with that. Because I mean, that's a sin in itself. Like in the same way that we tell people, like if you know adultery is a sin, why do it? And then like why continue to do it even if you know it's a sin? So I think that like it doesn't matter like, oh, it's just food and food's good for us. Like yes, that's all true, but I mean to overindulge in it, that's not acceptable. Like especially if you know it's not good for you.
Right. Like I said, it's very common for a lot of us. I'm sure a lot of our viewers struggle with gluttony. Caitlin, do you think that there was ever a time in your life where you struggled with this?
Yeah, I think there are times when I think everyone has struggled with this, but I also think that gluttony, I agree with what you said, that it's taking in more than you can handle, but I also think it's taking in more than what you need.
Yeah.
Like your body tells you when it's full, it tells you when you don't need more food, yet we eat because we're sad. Like I think that was how I used to eat. I used to eat when I was emotional and I was stressed out. I would stress eat when I studied, and I would just eat without really paying attention to the food and without honoring a meal. And so I think I used it as a coping method instead of facing what I was dealing with. And so I think that stress eating is a form of gluttony, but I also think that gluttony is one of those sins that no one thinks about. No one talks about the way you would talk about lying or stealing. Like, it is still a sin, and God still does not approve of it. He doesn't like it. But I also think that it's something we need to be more conscious of, because if we are pushing our body to the limits and we just continue to do so, that's not honoring our body, and that's not honoring food, and that's not honoring what God has given us. It's taking more than what we need. It's taking more advantage than what we should.
Absolutely, that's very true. And Caitlin touched on something that we are going to discuss in a little bit in our episode. And I believe these two reasons should be enough for why we need to be healthy, because it's biblical. It's what God commands of us. However, it seems like it's not enough for us as Christians. So we would end our show right now if this is where, we focus, our bodies belong to God. Gluttony is a sin, period. Get healthy, eat right for your body. But we are going to go deeper into this topic. And Caitlin touched on something that I do want to discuss briefly. It's emotional eating. I know for me personally, I never struggled with eating disorders, but I have a very unhealthy attachment to food. Food makes me very happy. It just really makes me very happy. And if I'm having a bad day, I want to go to McDonald's, get 2 cheeseburgers, large fries, and a large Coke, and eat it by myself all alone. And that's just something that makes me really happy, and it gets me through that bad moment. However, it's very bad for my body. As much as I enjoy it, I know it's very bad for my body. But Caitlin did talk about it a little bit. Stress eating also is a form of having a very unhealthy attachment to food. But right now we're going to talk a little bit more about our Egyptian culture and how we view what good health is. And I think for us as Egyptians and in our community, we think health is all about being fat or being thin. I think the first thing when we see each other and when we look at people, it's like, oh, she gained weight. Oh, no, she lost weight. It's all about how a person looks. And it's not limited to the Egyptian culture. I mean, of course, it's everywhere. If you look at magazines, there's very high standards for what our bodies should look like. And of course, for women, it's so much harder. And that's why eating disorders are very common among girls, because a lot of girls will go through starvation in order to have that nice thin body. And the minute even as moms, we moms are very guilty of this. We look at our daughters and it's all about, how they look. And not only them, but we always communicate to them. I know I've been very guilty of this. Like, did I gain weight? Do I look heavy? Does this make me look good? It's all about the weight. So we're going to discuss that a little bit. And I know I'm guilty of it. I admit it. I put it out there. And I just want to talk about how that impacted my daughters whenever I had that conversation with them. So Danielle, speak to how girls respond to their moms when we focus too much on our image and basically our weight.
Well, I don't think I never had a negative reaction towards it. It wasn't that, it just was more bothersome. I'd be like, no, you look fine. No, you didn't gain weight. It's not a big deal. And then I think my next logical conclusion is, okay, well, if you think you don't look healthy, then take the steps to get healthy. Don't just sit there. Don't just be like, oh, I gained weight. Okay, I'm just going to stay this way. No, if you think that your body is not at its peak health, then do something about it. And that's my kind of frustration with it. And so I think speaking to the whole culture of moms imposing that on their daughters, I think it's just a matter of shifting our focus. So it's less about being like, oh, if you eat this way, you'll lose weight. And if you eat this way, it'll keep you super fit and healthy. And it's more about, hey, if you eat a lot of vegetables, that really nourishes your body and your body will be able to perform better and you'll think better and you'll speak better. If you choose to eat fruit instead of sugar, processed sugars, that will probably sustain you a lot longer. You won't feel as, you won't hit a sugar high and then you won't crash. And I think it's just changing the way we speak about it and the way we think about it. And I know for me personally, I've been told my entire life, oh, you're so thin. Oh, you're so skinny. Oh, why are you so skinny? Well, you should eat more. You should do this more. And I think for me, it always bothered me because I have a fast metabolism. I'm naturally skinnier. And I think for me, what I always heard was, oh, you're not healthy. You don't look healthy. You look sick. You don't look good. When in actuality, I was like, no, this is probably the healthiest I've ever been. I'm eating what is good for me. And so it's just, I think, changing the framework from how you look to how you feel. And so it's less about, oh, you look big or you look small or you look this or you look that, and more about, well, how do you feel? How's your body functioning? Do you feel energetic? Do you feel balanced? Do you sleep well? Do you exercise? Do you do all these things that help your body function at its peak? Or are you so concerned with how you look that you're like not paying attention to how you feel? Because just because someone is thin doesn't mean they feel good. Like, just because you're thin doesn't mean you're actually healthy. And I had a health professor tell me that in college. She was like, you're skinny, but that doesn't mean you're healthy. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Like, just because I'm skinny doesn't mean that all those burgers and fries and cupcakes and milkshakes and cookies that I eat makes me healthy. Like, no, I'm still unhealthy because I just am benefiting from a fast metabolism. So I think as far as the dynamic goes between moms and daughters, it just starts from an early age being like, hey, if you eat like carrots, that's really good for your eyesight and you want to have good eyes as you get older. And if you eat protein, that helps your muscles develop and you want to have strong muscles as you get older. And then just like going down the list and explaining to kids, like, why do we eat certain foods and how's it going to benefit our body in the long run? Because then if you know that, you're going to be like, okay, well, logically, between a cupcake and a carrot, I'm going to choose the carrot because that's going to give my body what it needs, and the cupcake is not necessarily that. So I think that's kind of just, it's changing the way we talk about it.
That's a very good point. And I like that Danielle gave you examples on how to, especially if you've got young children at home and you still have that influence over them. I think Danielle gave you a few good tips right now on how to communicate the health benefits of eating a carrot versus a cupcake. Yesterday I was invited to an Egyptian feast at school. It was for 5th graders. And because I'm Egyptian, I was invited, and I was looking at the food, and the kushari, was one of the dishes. So kushari is pasta and rice and lentil, of course. And then I was looking at the pita bread, and I was looking at more rice, and so it's all carbs. Very, of course there's chicken and meat and kofta, but it was really mainly more carbs. And that's basically how I think I would be safe to say that's how we grew up at home. So Caitlin, what shifted in your attitude and in your desire to change that up a little bit from the way you grew up at home? What happened to bring on that change in you?
So growing up, I was always really skinny. Like, I was skinny growing up, and I ate junk. I ate chicken nuggets. I ate fries. I didn't eat any grain, vegetable, or any. I ate bologna sandwiches with American cheese. It was disgusting. But I was active, and I played soccer all through my life up until senior year of high school, and I was always running around playing football with boys, and I was running around with my friends at recess. And so the food didn't have an effect on how I looked. And I was a kid, so I was super energetic, and I didn't have any energy falls from it, or I didn't notice it. But college, I think, is when I realized I was taking over my own health. I was feeding myself for the first time. I was figuring out what I was going to have for dinner or lunch that day, if I was going to have breakfast or not. And so I think when I had that autonomy in college of deciding how I'm going to nourish my body, when I get to exercise, if I exercise, how that goes, I was realizing, wow, I'm eating really poorly. I would go to the dining halls and you could eat whatever you wanted. And so I would have 3 plates of food and then ice cream and then cookies and then a brownie because it was free and I could have it. And why not? It tastes good. So I think when I was finally feeling the effects of that and freshman 15 came on, I was like, wow, this is not okay. My metabolism has slowed down. I'm not playing soccer anymore. Like, I don't feel good. I feel my self-esteem went down a lot, and also my energy went down a lot, and I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't sleeping enough. And so I think in college, when I was finally on my own and I was feeding myself and I was learning about food in health class and I was learning about exercise, I started watching documentaries, and I started watching about the way food is processed, especially in the United States, and I think every other country is different, but where our food comes from is what I care a lot about now, and how it's processed is what I care a lot about now. And that has made me cut out food in my life that I know It's not sustainably processed. It's not, there's hormones and junk all up in that you do not need for your body, and that is ultimately going to hurt your body. So when I started educating myself and I started learning and experiencing the depletion that I felt, I decided, okay, no, this is my life, this is my body, and I want to feel the best. I want my self-esteem to be good. I want to exercise a healthy amount. I want to eat right, balanced. And if I go to a ton's house and they keep forcing me 3 plates of food, even though I'm overeating, I'm going to stay strong and say, no, thank you. But no, I don't want to eat this 8th plate of cushiony because I'm full. I was full 8 hours ago, but they just do that.
Thank you, Caitlin. She actually brought up a great topic that we're going to discuss. We're going to take a break right now, and when we return, we will talk a little bit about exercising. Thank you. Welcome back to Girl Talk. If you're just tuning in now, we're discussing nutrition and exercise and being healthy. And right before break, Caitlin discussed a little bit about why she decided to get healthy after growing up in our home where we didn't really eat very healthy. She went away to college. She realized that she was beating up her body by feeding it food that was depleting her of energy. And she picked up exercising, which we are going to talk a little bit about this right now. And before we go into that, like I had said, I had a very emotional attachment to food. I also struggled with fasting growing up. And you know, in the Coptic Church, I think we're fasting 200, maybe more than 200 days of the year. And I always cheated when I fasted, and that was a big problem because I loved food too much. But unfortunately, later on in life, I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and that forced me to pay more attention to what I was eating. And I remember a nutritionist one time said to me, you need to make food your medicine before medicine becomes your food. And that's something that when I see the older generation and I talk to them a lot of them are on so much medication. Like I think when I could be in the middle of a conversation with them and they've got 15 pills outside, like ready to take 15 pills for high blood pressure, for sugar, for diet, for anything. And I realized that really hit me hard, that if I don't start making food my medicine, medicine's going to become my food. And I didn't want that. So that forced me to make a drastic change. But to be honest, I really haven't changed much. I still revert to my old habits. Hopefully at age 51, I will learn better lessons, and I'm learning from my daughters. So we talked a little bit about exercise. Caitlin touched up on it a little bit. They grew up with a father who exercises, I think, like maybe 5 to 7 days a week. He loves it. You know, he's addicted to it, and it's been so good for him. I grew up in a home where when my brother decided to lift weights, my dad had a panic attack that he thought it was going to hurt his back and his neck. So we were not really encouraged to do a lot of strength training. We didn't run. We didn't go to the gym. So we didn't do any of that. But Danielle and Caitlin have a different mindset, and we're going to discuss a little bit about exercising. I mean, the girls they have very healthy metabolism, but I think exercising is not just to lose weight. Exercising is a lot more than that. So Danielle, can you speak a little bit about the effect of exercising and the health benefits of it?
I mean, I think Caitlin would be a better person to ask because she exercises way more than I do. It's such a struggle for me to get to the gym sometimes, honestly. I think I can get lazy or tired, or I'll get to the gym and then I'll like walk around and I'll be like, oh, I'll do this for 5 minutes, and then I'll do this for 10 minutes, and then that's enough, I'll go home now. But I think it's just a matter of like getting out and moving. It doesn't matter like what you're doing specifically. Like you don't have to go to the gym for 2 hours every single day to be healthy. And I think for me, what I've learned is like as long as I get out there, and even if it's just like 30 minutes of doing something, that's still better than doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes for me, honestly, that counts as like taking the dog on a really long walk. Mm-hmm. Because at least like I'm moving, we're both walking, and walking is still so good for you. It just gets your body moving, gets your heart pumping. So I've been kind of just like learning how to find what I enjoy and then doing that. And it doesn't have to be the same thing every day. Because like there are some people who go to the gym and they're like, every Monday I do this, and then every Tuesday it's this, and then they go on and that's what they do. And for me, it's more like okay, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday I worked. And so like if I work a 12-hour shift, that's exhausting. I'm not going to push my body any harder. But then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I could, do something like at least 30 to 45 minutes of going out, moving, doing something that just kind of gets my blood like pumping and going. But I mean, it's hard. And especially if you work long hours and you have long days, and it can be really tiring. And if you don't know what to do at the gym, it can be really exhausting. But I think we have to just kind of restructure our mind and focus less on, oh, I have to go to the gym to exercise, versus, you know what, actually, I can go on a long walk. Or if I have a 30-minute lunch break, I'm going to eat for 10 minutes and then take a 20-minute walk and go walk around during my lunch break. And I think it's just more about, if you have 30 minutes for lunch, then 10 minutes of eating, 20 minutes of walking and working out. And, recruit coworkers to do it with you. Like, have someone do it. I know at the hospital where I work, during like lunch, sometimes when I'm going down to the cafeteria to get my food, I will see some of the employees just like they put their sneakers on and they just walk throughout the hospital, and that's their workout for the day. So it's good to just get moving. And then once you start to like build endurance and strength, then you can kind of like build what you do in your workouts. But I think for me, it's like opting, instead of watching TV for an hour at night, I'm going to go walk for an hour. And it's just kind of making those healthier choices and being more disciplined in that regard. But I know for me it's still very hard, and there are some days where I'm like, I'm going to sleep in instead of going to the gym, and I don't want to go to the gym, and I don't want to talk to anyone at the gym, and I don't even know what to do at the gym. But I mean, there's never been a time where I've left the gym and been like, oh, I really wish I didn't go. You always leave and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did this, and that was really good for me. And plus, like, I'm young enough where you just lay those habits now. Like, it's harder to, I think, to backtrack and go back and say, oh, I never worked out in my 20s and 30s, but now I'm going to start in my 40s. Not that you shouldn't do that, but I think it's harder to set those healthy habits later in life. So if you start younger and you just keep building on it, then it just becomes second nature to you. It's not, like you're starting from scratch again.
Right, and I like how Danielle touched on how good you feel after a workout. I know for me personally, I mean, I don't get to the gym as much as I would like, but when I do go to the gym, it makes me feel energetic. It puts me in a good mood because of how your body's reacting, the hormones you're producing. You feel like you're high on energy, high on life. So I just think it's a great habit for us to get into. I know in Egypt, at least from what I hear from my cousins in Egypt, you're walking a lot more than how much we walk here. So they get a lot of exercise there. I'm sure they have gyms, obviously, but I think over there you're walking a lot. So that's a great exercise. And fresh air, I always think is really good. I love walking, and in the summer and the spring, if I can get out and walk 2 or 3 miles a day, I would enjoy that more than walking on a treadmill inside the gym. So as Danielle's saying, we don't have to be obsessed about our workout routine. It's not like we have to be addicted to the gym, and we have to be so rigid about it and work out 2 or 3 hours a day. Yesterday I was speaking to a mom who was sharing with me her daughter works out 4 times a day, and we're going to talk about what that means. A lot of us don't realize that working out and exercising can be a form of an eating disorder, right? I mean, do you agree? Sometimes people can take it to an extreme and they're over exercising. Because like I know one person, she would eat a donut and she'd go work out for 2 hours on the treadmill. That's an eating disorder. And that's what we want to speak about now, about eating disorders and why we develop it and how we develop it. I know a lot of it is, it could be issues, it could be habits. But did you in high school have any friends who struggled with eating disorders?
I think most teenage girls struggle with eating disorders at some point. But something I would like to go back on is like the eating a donut and running for 2 hours. I think that is a really good example of tying in nutrition and exercise together, because if you're eating well, you don't feel that guilt that you're like, oh shoot, I'm gonna gain weight this week from this, and I'm gonna gain weight from eating that pizza last night, and so I'm gonna compensate by running. Like, no, if you make good choices, you don't feel that guilt anymore. You don't feel that lack of control over your body anymore. And I think that when you tie the two together and you start making those changes, you're just going to feel more relaxed with how you live your life and how excited it is to eat good food, good tasting food, but also like know that it's not harming your body and it's not causing you to feel like you have to do something you don't want to do. But going back to eating disorders, I definitely think friends I have right now have eating disorders. And
Even now at your age?
Oh, definitely. I'm 22, and I think that self-esteem is so real. Social media is so harmful to how girls view their bodies. They're comparing themselves to people who get paid to be super skinny, who are told their whole lives that they're too fat, and so they probably also have eating disorders to do that. And so what our role models have become are people who obsess over how they look and how they modify their body with apps about, photoshopping their bodies. I blanked out there. But it's not real. But this is what we think that we need to look like. And so I think right now I have some friends that over-exercise. They run tremendous amount that they should not, but they don't eat to compensate for that time. And I think if you're over-exercising, that is a form of eating disorder, because unless you are eating the proper amount you need, you're getting the nutrition you need for that exercising, you're not having a healthy relationship with food. And so you're lacking in that, and you're probably over-exercising for a reason. But I think in high school especially, I had an unhealthy relationship with food, and I think it was just that I had that guilt, like, oh shoot, if I eat this, I'm just not going to eat this meal later, or something like that. And I think a lot of our friends did. We were all comparing ourselves to each other, to girls we look at on Instagram and Twitter or whatever. But it's hard to not have an eating disorder, and it's hard not to respect your body if that's not how you were raised. You weren't raised on a healthy lifestyle.
I do think that it's important to say too that like none of us are experts on eating disorders, and so I would say that if you think you do have an eating disorder, or you think that someone you know has an eating disorder, definitely seek out help, because like we are not experts. We don't diagnose this stuff. Like there are people who can diagnose this. There are people who study this. There are people who are experts in these fields. And I would say that like if you feel like you or someone you know has an unhealthy relationship with food, like errs on the side of starvation, or eating in excess and then throwing it all up, or over exercising, I would say definitely seek out help and resources. And there's tons of resources everywhere, just because it is serious, and it is like it's an official disease. Like you can be diagnosed with an eating disorder, and I think it is important to go get the help that you would need, because there is hope for eating disorders, and you can be healed from them, and you can recover, and you can go on to lead a healthy, productive life. But I will say that it is important to seek out the help if you need it, because like we're not experts, we don't know, we don't diagnose. So I think it is important for us to just like emphasize that, I mean, it's everywhere. Like I went to girls in high school with it. I went to girls in college who had one. I still think people have it in their 20s and 30s and 40s.
Definitely.
Like I don't think there's ever a time frame where you're like, oh, I no longer have an eating disorder because I turned 30 yesterday and I'm suddenly healed. But I do think it is important to get help if you do have one, because like I can't speak to what it's like to live with an eating disorder, because I don't know what that would be like for a person, to have to endure that struggle day in and day out, because it is so hard. Like, I mean, it's hard to think about. And I mean, if you like, I've seen patients with eating disorders, and it honestly boggles my mind, because I'm like, what do you mean you don't want to eat? Like, what do you mean you can sit and go for days without eating? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But I mean, it's a disease, and it's hard to overcome, but there is definitely help. And I think we should just like emphasize more of that. Like, it's not something to be ashamed of and hide. It's more important that like you get the help you need, and you'll be shocked to find how much support you can actually get if you do have that.
Right, Danielle's absolutely right. None of us here are experts on it, and we're not going to focus too much on it. But she also, if you're not an expert on it, but you do know someone who's struggling with it, calling them out in an insulting way will hurt them even further. You need to be gentle with them. You need to approach them in a very loving way. You need to have a relationship with them, and you need to point them in the right direction. I mean, people die from eating disorders. It's very serious. We don't want to overlook it. We don't want to be blind to the fact that in our culture it does not exist. It does exist. And so be very mindful of it, and be very sensitive and in tune to it. But if you're not an expert, and if you didn't study it, and you don't have the knowledge, don't be the one to try to treat that person. Point them in the right direction. I mean, I I can overlook it very easily. I work in a school, I see high school girls. I probably wouldn't know who has an eating disorder and who doesn't have an eating disorder. So this is something that's very serious, and let's be mindful on it. Right now, I just want to shift and talk a little bit about the effect food has on our minds, because it's not just our body, but it also affects our moods. And we want to talk a little bit about that, the highs and the lows that we have, and the way we react to food and the moods that it puts us in. I know for me, when I don't eat healthy and I consume too much sugar, I'm not in really a great mood. I'm very lethargic, I'm very tired, I'm very fatigued, and some foods even trigger headaches and migraines. And I've become more mindful of that. Do either one of you struggle with that a little bit? Like, do you find like some foods will like just weigh you down a little bit because of the not healthy, just not getting the better nutrients from the food?
I don't think I notice foods that make me feel lethargic. I just don't eat that anymore. So I don't really notice a difference in what types of food make me feel less
Happier.
or just, yeah, like happy. I know it makes me tired, but my mind, that's harder to figure out. But when I started eating mainly fruits and vegetables and grains like rice and quinoa, and I stopped eating a lot of dairy, and I stopped eating a lot of meats, because the types of meat I was eating was not good. It was fried. It was just really unhealthy. So that's when I noticed the biggest difference in how I felt. I've never felt better than when I was vegan for about 6 months probably, and so I think I always felt so energetic. There was never that feeling of guilt over what I ate, because I was eating so much throughout the day, because the calories are very small. So I would eat nonstop throughout the entire day, but never once did I regret doing that because of what I was eating. I was eating a lot of vegetables and peanut butter and nuts and grains and fruit all the time, and that's what my body wanted, and it craved that after a while. I stopped craving sweets. I stopped craving chicken nuggets. I stopped craving Coke because I was so satisfied by the good nutrients I was eating, and it made me happy. Like, my self-esteem skyrocketed, because with that I was also like, wow, I feel so great. I wonder what happens if I exercise a little bit and gain a little muscle. And so it became fun to realize how far my body could go, how my discipline was so good about sticking to the food that I know my body wants. And that helped my mind in so many ways.
So like, what kinds of things did you eat? Because I mean, I know when we fast Lent in the Coptic Church, it's vegan, but
That's
then
why I was laughing, is because it's like as if our body was designed for the Coptic fast.
Yeah.
But it's not just that, but like, I mean,
it's
how many
different.
people do you see at church on Sundays and they're like, oh, I'm so tired, I'm so fatigued. And you're like, well, what did you eat? And they're like, well, I had kushri for lunch, and then I had pasta for dinner, and then I had oatmeal for breakfast. And you're like, oh, okay, well,
It's filling.
it's filling. Like, I'm
But-
sure you're not hungry.
Jeez, yeah.
But like, that's a lot. So like, what kinds of things?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think it'd just be helpful for people to be like, oh yeah, there is so much stuff you can do with being a vegan. That doesn't necessarily mean I have to eat pasta and rice and kushri and bread and all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
like,
funny because I didn't eat a lot of carbs either,
Right.
but that was unintentional.
Yeah.
So I studied veganism. It's whatever. I studied being vegan through documentaries, and I read a lot about it before I started it. And so what I noticed is I was eating a lot throughout the day because I wasn't eating pasta for lunch, and I wasn't eating oatmeal. Like, I love oatmeal though. I love oatmeal, and I think that's a great breakfast.
Yeah.
Paired with like fruit.
Right.
And berries. And paired with like an apple. And I think I made plants my main source of food. Because that ultimately filled me up, because when your body is getting all the nutrients it actually wants, you feel full. Like, I feel full after an apple with almond butter or peanut butter right now, and I love that, and I make it fun. I put cinnamon on it and honey, and I make it a nice snack. And I didn't eat a lot of bread, but I think that's just because bread makes me tired, and carbs make me tired. If I eat so many carbs, it makes you tired, and I think that's a mistake that some people have with fasting. They don't know what they're able to eat, so they eat what they know. But if you explore, like salads don't really fill you up. But if you add quinoa to them, or rice, or if you just add vegetables into every meal you have, or fruit into every meal you have, you're slowly going to realize, wow, this tastes so much better, and I'm more full.
Yeah.
And I didn't need that extra piece of bread. I didn't need that extra spoonful of pasta. But I think I ate a lot of baked and sautéed vegetables with rice and tofu or with
Yeah.
beans. And then I would have smoothies. I loved smoothies. Those are filling too. Smoothies
They
are
are
very
so
filling.
With the non-dairy options then.
Yeah,
like
with
almond
almond
Like
milk.
almond milk
Or
or
soy
coconut
milk,
or something.
Right.
or anything, or water even. If you put a ton of fruit with some water, you're still gonna feel as full because you're having like a banana, an apple, an orange.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Definitely.
So I think getting more creative with how you eat and respecting plants, and also just knowing that what food makes you feel really tired versus what food makes you feel really energetic, and trying to focus more on that. Trying to focus more on, like, broccoli is probably one of the best vegetables for you, and it has protein, and it has iron, and it has antioxidants, and it has so many good stuff for you. But if you have that every dinner,
Right.
and you just try to put that into everything you eat, like a stir fry, an Asian stir fry, I think that's so good. But I personally love Coptic fasting because I really enjoy the creativity that you can have with the food. I feel best when I'm not eating meat and dairy. And I think it's a cool opportunity to see how far you can go. You can practice cooking. You can practice more discipline and cutting other things out.
Right.
Like if you cut out bread, wow, what are you going to eat? Wait, I have to figure that out. Let's figure this out.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
Well, I think one thing that you said, broccoli having protein, I think there's a misconception and misunderstanding that vegetables don't have protein. They think that the only protein you're going to get is from meats. So that's wrong. You do get a lot of protein from vegetables.
Sure.
One thing Caitlin also said was how much she enjoys fruits and vegetables. Something my mother-in-law told me many, many years ago. She had said she feels like God created, God obviously when he created our bodies and he put Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, our bodies were designed to eat the way Adam and Eve ate in the Garden of Eden. But of course, over time, as sin entered the world, that also changed. So as we wrap up this episode today, we hope that we gave you a few tips to help you at least think about getting healthy, because it all starts in the mind. It's a personal choice. It's something that you need to decide to do. We cannot make that decision for you. Every day I have to choose to be healthy. God commanded us. He gave us a gift. He gave us our body. He gave us our mind. And we are required to take care of it so that way we can present it back to the Lord. We are his workmanship, and we were created to do good works. And part of the good works is taking care of our body. So thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Danielle and Caitlin, for being here with me. This was very exciting. And we'll see you next time on Girl Talk.